Hey, what's going on guys? Brian coming to you once again from the TST Industries garage. Today I have a 2018 Yamaha WR250R behind me. We want to do something to clean up the front end a little bit. So what we're going to do is today we're going to take off those stock pod signals, those huge ones that are way out to the side. We're going to replace them with something a little bit stealthier. So we have decided to throw on our BL6 pod signals. That's the style that we like the most. But I will also touch on the installation of the ARO18 signal, just in case that is what you want to run. They're very, very similar installations. You're just going to use a different portion of the pod signal mounting adapting kit. Other than that, exact same installation steps. The wires even go to the same parts of the harness converter. So without any further ado, guys, let's jump right in, get this started. All right, so I went ahead and I grabbed my 8mm socket. We have 2 bolts to remove here to get this headlight cowling to be hanging down, giving us access to where our signals are actually plugged in. So we're going to go ahead and take the upper mounting bolt off. Keep that off to the side. It is important. Come around to the other side, show you the other one. Right up here, down by where the brake line is routed. Again, take this guy, set it down off to the side. Keep track of that, you'll want it later. So now what we could do is we can go ahead and pivot our headlight forward, and then it will actually, there's some friction fasteners right down here. We'll actually go ahead and keep pushing forward and it's going to pop out. So we now have our headlight cowling off. We do have access to our signals. I'm going to go ahead and remove the headlight entirely, just so I could set this off to the side. If that's your first time ever pulling off this headlight plug, it will be on there pretty tight, but just give it a little bit of a wiggle back and forth. It'll eventually go free. You can set this off to the side. So we will need a wire cutter, which I've gone ahead and grabbed. We have a zip tie right here that's holding our signal plugs all together. I'm gonna cut that guy. So now we have these little sheaths here. We're gonna move those off to the side. It doesn't really matter which side. We've exposed our left signal, the gray one. We could keep note of that for later. Slide this guy back the other way. Exposing our right signal. We're going to release the little latch. You just saw me do that pretty quickly on the gray one. So we're going to release the latch, pull that back out. Could keep these little sheaths off to the side for later. I'm going to throw them back on our installation. You don't have to. They're just kind of weather shielding. All right, so with our signals unplugged, we can actually go ahead and start the removal process. I'm going to start over here on the bike's right. I'm going to unroute that wire. It was routed back behind this bracket that holds the instrument gauges there. So we're going to unroute that, and then there's a small clip right there on the actual mounting piece. We're going to remove that as well. And then right here, there's a small backing plate to the signal. We're going to open up the little rubber tabs, take that backing plate off, slip it through, and then just like that, guys, the signal can pop out. That little backing plate just kind of holds this grommet in place so that that can't fall out when it is in place, but once you remove it, it just pops out very easily. I'm going to repeat the process on the bike's left. So again, we're going to trace our cable down, take it out of the little clip, move those little rubber tabs out of the way, take the backing plate off, down and out. There we go, guys. All right, so it's at this time that I'd like to show you how we would go about the mounting of the ARO18, just because I will be following through with the mounting of the BL6 signal. So we're going to take our pod signal adapter kit, which you will need in this application. We have plate B, we have a plate A, and then we do have included black washers. So for the ARO18, we are going to need plate B and one of the flat washers, one for each side. So what we would do at this point is take the nut that is on the stem of the signal off. We would take plate B, mounting it with the pocket side towards the signal. Throw that over our stem. We would then take our stem, thread it into the bike area, mount it like that. We would take our black washer that I mentioned before, slide that on the wires, throw our nut back on, go ahead and get it in position. Then we'd go ahead and tighten that down right there with our pod signal adapter kit, putting us in a nice location. All right, so we're going to carry on with the installation of our BL6 signals. Now these are directional, so you do want to make sure that your logo is facing the right direction. Another telltale is the very top of the lens has a small concavity to it, depending on which way you look at it, but the bottom of the lens is actually perfectly flat. So that will tell you if you do have these oriented correctly. So we're going to start with the left one. We're going to need 2 for this side right now of our plates. We're going to need a B and an A. We can set the other B and the A off to the side. That's for later. So we're going to take our BL6 signal. We're going to remove the hardware that comes on it right now, which is a nut, a friction washer, and then a regular washer. So we're going to take the nut, and then this part does require a little bit of finesse. You have to move one of the bullet connectors down just slightly, because you can only pass one through the nut at a time. So once we do that, you can get that nut off. The 2 washers come off pretty easily. You don't have to do that same kind of finessing to it. So we are then going to take an A-sided plate. We're going to use the convex side towards the signal. Show you guys what I'm talking about. Just like that. We're going to take our signal leads, put them through the bike. We're going to take a B-sided mounting plate, throw that on now. We're going to take the flat washer, put that over our wire leads. We're going to take the friction washer, and then we are going to take our nut, and just as we took it off, go back on. So 1 bullet connector at a time passes through. There we go. We have everything kind of in position, so we can push our signal through and start to hand thread that nut. Because once we get that, this becomes a little less convoluted. You'll see I have a lot of moving parts right now, but once we get this started to thread, it becomes a little bit easier to work with. So once we have that nut started to hand tighten on our stem here, notice that things get a little bit less convoluted, stuff starts moving into place, and our signal is essentially where it should be. So I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, and then we're going to touch on our harness converters and how we would go about plugging those in and wiring these correctly. All right, so with our right side signal on, I'm going to go ahead and turn this bike back straight. Show that we'll be working here for a little while. All right, so to make this installation process a total breeze, we've opted to use our Yamaha harness converters. They are a bullet connector on one end and then the OEM Yamaha connector on the other. We're gonna go ahead and plug this into our gray, which is our left side, and our black signal connectors, which is our right side. Make sure we get a good connection there. We'll clip in. So we are then going to take our right side signal, we're going to take our yellow lead, which is going to go to our brown lead on the connector. Make sure we get a good click, notifying us that our bullet connectors have engaged. Our black wire from the signal is then going to go to the red wire on the harness converter. Repeat that on this left side here. So once again, we're going to go black to red and yellow to brown. If we had gone yellow to blue, we would have these as a running light configuration. However, they would not work as signals. That's not something we're interested in doing. Let's double check that we have this connected properly. Left is left, right is right, as it should be. And there we have it. Our signals are most of the way installed. So we're going to go ahead and tidy this area up a little bit. I'm going to grab a little bit of electrical tape to make sure that these sheaths stay in place. If they do slide back at any point and these leads connect, you will short that out, possibly blowing a fuse. We don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and tape this up. We're going to throw those, actually, that might be a good idea. I'm going to disconnect this lead right now, and I'm going to throw this OEM sheath back on there, just because we can protect the OEM connectors the same way that they had from the factory. So there you have it, guys. I'm going to grab some tape, and then we're going to carry on here. Take a little bit of tape here, grab one of our bullet connectors, just wrap around the wire and the sheath, making sure that it's not going to move around on us. Do 2 or 3 loops this way. Then once we're confident in the one, we can go ahead and grab that other wire, wrap them together, just to make sure that those leads do stay in place. This third lead doesn't really matter. You guys can tape that in there as well. I've chosen not to because we are going to zip tie everything together. So we're going to repeat that process on our right signal. All right, so with our sheaths in place over our OEM connectors, we can go ahead and grab a zip tie from our spares bin. Take the wire. I like to loop it in half, both of them. They should be about the same length at this point, so I'm going to loop them in half, go in half again, and then I'm actually going to opt, there's kind of a wire loom hanging down from the gauge cluster. I'm going to tuck my little pack of wires into that, grab them all with my hand, making sure I'm leaving the headlight loose because we need to plug that back in. Now with all of them bundled in my fingers, I'm throwing one zip tie back over all of them. Make sure your wire sheaths are still kind of in the correct place, just covering that plug. There we have it, guys. Trim off that excess. You'll notice here this wire did actually, both of them actually, release themselves from those little channels that I had put them in before, but that's okay. We have a little bit of extra room, so we're just going to reroute them back there. Now what we're going to do as a final step before we throw our headlight cowl back on is I just want to take a 14 open-ended socket, or rather wrench, sorry, and then make sure that our signals are level and where we want them to be, facing forward. We're going to go ahead and tighten this stem down a little bit. You don't have to over tighten it. You're tightening against rubber, so that is going to be held there pretty well. You do also have that friction washer on the inside. Make sure we're in the right orientation. I'd say I do about 3 total turns from bottoming out by hand. I'll do about 3 total turns after that, and that's enough compression on that nut for those not to come loose. So we're going to double check that those are where we want them to be. And from there, guys, I'm going to grab the headlight cowl. We're going to throw that back into the friction fasteners, plug it back in if you did remove it. If you just had it hanging off to the side, that's something you don't have to worry about. Then we're going to throw our 2 fasteners back into the headlight cowl, and this installation will be complete. So I like to start by locating these little friction fasteners, kind of starting to put them down into the grommets. At that point, I'll go ahead and take my headlight, reconnect it, make sure I'm dodging my wires with the back of the actual headlight itself, navigate those little friction fasteners down into place, push down and back to make sure that those are seating properly. They'll kind of click in once they do. I'm going to go ahead and grab our fastener, push our headlight cowl back into place. I'm going to start these by hand, then grab my tool again. This is a frame component, so I would suggest that you start it by hand. Just because if you strip that, you're not going to have a fun time. Same thing on this side. It's at this point that I'm going to switch to my tool. So I'm going to go bottom out, and then like an 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn, not even really. Just bottom out. Yeah, like a 1/4 of a turn max really on that. That's all it's going to take, guys. We have completed the installation of our BL6 signals. We're going to do one last check, make sure they're working. Now that everything's tucked away and tightened. So let's try right signal. Perfect. Left signal. All right, we're all there, we're all cooperating, everything's looking good. We do have one minor issue here. That's going to be that They are hyper flashing, as you can see, but that is something we can correct. We're just gonna handle that in another video with another part. I'll catch you guys in that video. If you guys wanna pick up these signals or the AR018, you could visit our website at tstindustries.com. For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're always coming out with new parts for new bikes. Catch you guys next time.